think there are one or two more things in there as well, but I tried to shorten it because I know it doesn't fit on comfortably onto the top of any page. But could I just thank Maeve and 1 and 4 and your board for not the invitation, because that's normally how the speech starts, but indeed for collating your experience for the last 12 months. I think this report tells us things that we didn't know before, and I always find that very important. Also, in other areas that I have responsibility for, I'm always convinced that in terms of the type of research that is done, and I know that your organisation is not necessarily a research organisation, but nevertheless I think this report does give us, I suppose, a view of a section of society that isn't always visible to the rest of us. And when it comes to research in other areas, I always find that unless you have the research, and unless you absolutely know that you can rely on the research, that it's validated, that it's good evidence, then you don't know where to put the resources. You know, the scattergun approach, I believe, doesn't work. It never has worked, and it never will work. And there are always calls on government in terms of resources. There are always calls. I was taking the medical professionals bill last week in the Dáil, and I think there were 20 speakers came in to speak on it. Oh, and I should have, I'm very sorry, Deputy Troy, I should have acknowledged your presence. Deputy Troy is here as well. When 20 people came in to speak on the bill, and I'm not certain whether Deputy Troy was one of them, but each person that came in spoke about a different element in relation to health and social care. And each person that stood up, and I took note of it, each person that stood up spoke about their area as the priority area. So, you know, there's always those type of pulls and tugs in relation to funding and where we should put our money. I'm always convinced that unless you absolutely have the evidence, and unless you can point to putting it there would make a significant difference, I feel that that's really the type of stuff that we need to be looking at, and not the type of scattergun approach. And I know, well, I'm hoping anyway, there's no one here that will report it, but I know that there's always this, party politics is always about sort of maybe you should put a little bit there and a little bit here and a little bit there. I must admit, I don't buy into that concept at all. Maybe I should, maybe it would make life easier for me in the future, but I don't buy into it. I believe that we need to put our resources, as limited as they are now, where it will make the most significant change. It's very interesting to hear that the internet has become such an integral part of how people live their lives and how they're led into certain areas. And we have been working on that. We have been doing some significant work on it. It's very difficult when you can't control your own border. You know, when it is a global issue, when it does take everyone to cooperate at that level in order to have the consequences of their actions, you know, come home to roost. And I believe that the only way to do that would be maybe to have penalties for the site provider. Not the individual on the site, because I'm not certain that that is possible, but the site facilitator. I think we do know where they are, and I do think that that's where we need to be going. But it is very complex. It is very complex, and it's not just about either being sort of having a nanny state. It is clearly about education, and it is clearly about parental control as well, even though I saw from some of your figures that parental control really wouldn't be an issue because they would be over the age when we're supposed to have control anyway. But I do think that we need to take a serious look at that. We're also, and that bill that I spoke about that we took last week and will be taking again in the coming week, it is about the registration of professional bodies. And the priority for the next tranche of registration will be around the whole psychotherapy area. And it is quite difficult because it's not regulated right now, and it needs to be regulated. And if we don't regulate it, then, as you rightly say, Maeve, people could cause more damage than good. And that type of regulation will be in place once we have the registration done. And we need to do that, because there are people out there who, for very good reasons, feel they're going to do a good job and clearly would not have the type of qualifications that your staff and the people you employ have. So I'd like to thank you once again for the collation of what you have been doing and the way that your organisation, if you like, has evolved. Because up to this point, I think people genuinely believed that the only issue that you were involved with was in fact clerical abuse. And we see that that now has diminished, and probably because of the publicity and all of the other issues surrounding it, that now has reduced, but there are other issues emerging. We do need to have a partnership approach. I'm constantly saying the government can't be on every street corner, but then again, neither can 1 and 4. It has to be a partnership approach, and it has to be a constructive partnership approach to take a look at how this service is delivered and who it is delivered to and where it is delivered. And that is important. And if we have so many people now coming forward for whatever reason, and I'm reluctant to talk about the justice element of it, because I sometimes think that once you come from that point of view, then people that haven't offended but were thinking of offended, they shy away because they think they're into a process that will lead them nowhere other than the prison system. But I do think that once we now know where we need to put the resources, then it is much clearer. And when you have a collaborative approach to any issue like this, it works a lot better. People are far more inclined to approach a non-governmental agency than they are to approach a government-sponsored body. So these things are important. They're the things we will be looking at. And whereas you're doing an extraordinary job in extraordinary circumstances, I think that in the future we can do an awful lot more together. So congratulations once again. It's one of the reports this year that I find has shed light in an area that I believe up to this we misunderstood. Thank you.